With Ben McKee, Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com, we go around the horn on this Thursday night as Tennessee takes the series opening win against the Georgia Bulldogs 5-2. Volunteers on the Thursday night win. Ben, this felt a little bit more like Tennessee than what we saw last week in Kentucky. What's your takeaway from the win?
It felt like Tennessee baseball because it feels like baseball weather outside. It's not raining. It's not cold. You're not in Lexington where there was two Kentucky fans. And I know that wasn't the sole reason Tennessee lost, but I do think that made a difference. And it also makes a difference when you're starting Chase Dollander on the mound. That Georgia lineup's good. Second best average in SEC play. I think second most hits, second most runs, something along those lines. Really good offense. And Chase Dollander made them look like a bad offense. He was phenomenal. 6 strikeouts, no walks. That's my favorite part of his final stat line. Did give up the solo home run to right field, but just 3 hits on the day. And he just had complete command of the game. And I think if it's early season, mid-season, Brent, he continues to pitch and probably throws a complete game. But because it's Hoover, he is somewhat still working back from being hit by that line drive. No need to push him more than you did. So Chase Dollander, the story, kind of a boring game in terms of storylines. Chase Burns comes out of the bullpen. That's a significant storyline. Just a weekend type of deal, trying to get him and Drew Beam some rest. I would imagine Drew Beam starts on Saturday and doesn't throw a ton of pitches, but Burns comes out of the bullpen, looks good, but also gives up some hits and some walks as well. But I thought the story was that Chase Dollander made a good Georgia lineup look silly tonight.
So is Chase Dollander is he your opening game starter for postseason play for next weekend in Mississippi State? I mean, is he? And that's not a knock on Chase Burns, but has he just kind of asserted himself now that he's back healthy? That you're going to roll him out your first game in whatever series you're playing?
I don't know, because it'll depend on the thought process. Do you want to maybe gamble a little bit and maybe save Dollander for a potential elimination game, whether that's you being on the verge of being eliminated or whether you're trying to eliminate somebody else? Do you kind of save him and roll with a Chase Burns, Drew Beam at the beginning of Hoover or at the first game of the regional weekend? Or do you just want to play it safe and go with your best arm? So I don't know what Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson will be thinking in that regard. But I think really the premise of your question is Chase Dollander the best pitcher on this staff? And I think he is the best starting pitcher at this point. And he is by far the starting pitcher that I trust the most. Honestly, he's the pitcher that I trust the most on the entire staff, including the bullpen. So it just kind of depends on how you want to roll with when you throw him. But he is the guy at the top of the totem pole in my world.
Well, absolutely. I would imagine that would be the case as well. It makes the most sense. I tell you another guy who's up there, and I know he had the blown save against Auburn that everybody talked about. You know, hey, we got to get Ben Joyce in there throwing the heat because Walsh doesn't have the heat. But, I mean, he's on the verge of passing Todd Helton in the saves category for a career, which is saying a lot. And again, ground ball outs. He doesn't overpower you with anything, but he just puts the ball where he wants it. And I thought he was, again, terrific in light duty work and 4 quick outs tonight to close that thing out.
Redmond was awesome. And look, I'm one who I did overreact following that Sunday when Ben Joyce shoved against Auburn. And it wasn't so much that I was overreacting in the sense of Ben Joyce should replace Redmond Walsh because Ben Joyce throws 105 miles an hour and Redmond Walsh doesn't. It was more of me overreacting, and I still really don't feel like I'm overreacting, but it should be kind of a 1A, 1B type of situation. Not that Ben Joyce should supplant Redmond from the closer role, which Tony did refer to him as the closer tonight, that being Redmond. But, you know, Tennessee not being afraid anymore to deploy Ben Joyce in the way they did in that series finale against Auburn. It should be like a 1A, 1B type of situation. And I still think you'll see Ben Joyce somewhat unleashed down the stretch. But the last 2 weekends since that Auburn outing, you've seen why they trust him so much. I mean, that was a bad night of baseball, but it's baseball. And that's exactly what Redmond said it was last week after Kentucky. Bobby Pierce for Auburn, he just got him. Redmond said that he thought he made a good pitch on a slider against Bobby Pierce, and Bobby Pierce just made a better swing. And it resulted in a 3-run home run, and that he didn't, overthink it. and he just came back to the ballpark and kept doing his thing, and it paid off against Kentucky. Was tremendous in game 1 and game 3 against Kentucky. And then comes out, and we talk about that Georgia lineup that's really good. Chase Dollander made them look silly, and Redmond Walsh did too, coming in and somewhat bailing Chase Burns out of a big situation. The tying run was at the plate, wasn't on base, but you did have a runner on third with 2 outs, could have made it a 1-run game, and Redmond comes in and gets the strikeout to get out of the inning, and then no drama at all whatsoever in the top of the 9th. So Redmond Walsh was just as good as Chase Dolan tonight, just in a different type of way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you feel comfortable with those 2 guys probably more than anybody, and maybe Camden Sewell's in there at number 3 and a middle relief guy. When he's 100% and ready to go, which he should be, and is probably going to be counted upon later this series. Let's talk about this team at the plate. I want to circle back to Burns in a minute, but let's talk about this team at the plate. What do you make of where they are right now? Obviously, at home they're hitting a lot of home runs. They hit the home run ball tonight, to the tune of 3 runs. They get a sacrifice fly. Not the big, massive 5 or 6 run innings the last 4 or 5 games for this team. Where do you see them offensively right now?
That's a good question. I still have a lot of confidence in them. I just maybe don't have as much as I did a month ago. And it's more because it seems like the offense has kind of become streaky. And that is concerning when you get into postseason play, because all it takes is 1 game to be off your game. And the season comes to an abrupt end. Now, granted, double elimination and all that will factor in as well. But the point being is that streaky play, just like in basketball, shooting the ball, it can get you in trouble. And that's kind of been the Tennessee offense the last several weeks. I don't really remember a weekend in which the offense just dominated from start to finish recently. Kentucky was kind of streaky. Kentucky, they didn't have a good weekend at all until the final 2 innings of the weekend. Auburn, they had the big outburst in game 1, and then game 2 and game 3 still kind of streaky and here and there. But it's an offense that I still trust, Brent. It's just I do worry a little bit about the streakiness, and you can kind of see that I'm struggling to put my words together, because you know what they're capable of, and they're still winning. They're still doing great, but you also have seen them in recent weeks and in recent games maybe not be as consistent as they were at some point. And you don't want to cast doubt on them, but it does feel like they've taken at least one minor step backwards, even if it's not maybe a huge one.
Also says something about how great they were for 2.5 months of a baseball season, where that was the last even thought that you're sitting here and they score 5 runs, they hit 3 home runs tonight, and you're going, well, it was okay night at the plate. Speaking of streaky, that's where I'm sort of falling with Chase Burns right now. He looks really good, and then all of a sudden, seems like one bad thing gets him off kilter. He hit the batter tonight on an 0-2 count. He was cruising up to that. He hits the batter on the foot on the 0-2 count, and then he has a hard time seemingly finding the plate, gives up a hit there. What do you see out of him? Because he had not had that kind of struggles with adversity, if you will, earlier on in the year. What do you think is going on there right now?
I think early in the year he was relying on his stuff, which is, even for a true freshman at 18 years old, his stuff at this level is ridiculous, and there wasn't much of a scouting report on him, and now there is a scouting report on him, and I think the scouting report is that lay off the breaking ball, lay off the slider, sit fastball, and it really seems like he's not throwing that second pitch consistently enough to where the hitter has to think about the slider. They just lay off the slider and they sit fastball, and even on top of that, I don't think his command in general has been what it was to start the season. And I think that's probably because he's running into a little bit of a freshman wall, maybe mentally and physically. And that's why this weekend you're seeing him come out of the bullpen and not start. It's not him being punished because he's been bad or anything, or because he deserves to now come out of the bullpen. I think, like you saw with Chase Dollander tonight, not that it was, something that they would have liked to have gone through with him getting hit by the line drive and missing 2 starts, but he looked fresh out there tonight. It looked fresh against Kentucky. And I think that's where they're trying to get with Chase Burns, and not only Chase Burns, but Drew Beam as well, just because they're freshmen. They've never really thrown this much. And there has been a little dip off. They haven't been bad, but there has been a little dip of late. And I think that's why you're seeing the rotation the way it is this weekend. Tony Vitello said it quite frank that Tidwell and Dollander right now are the two freshest arms, and that's why they're the two guys that started. I wouldn't read too much into Burns coming out of the bullpen, especially looking towards postseason play. It's just, I think, a ploy to get them fresher entering postseason play. And even with Drew Beam, assuming that he'll start on Saturday, I mean, I don't think he's going to come out and throw 80, 90, 100 pitches. I would be pretty surprised. I even think his workload in that situation will be limited. So that's what I see with the two freshmen.
Interesting, and an interesting stance where not stance, but interesting where Tennessee is at with those guys and how they want to manage them. Mentality-wise, it looked like Chase Burns handled everything out of the bullpen fine. Didn't seem to bother him. I think the bigger question moving forward is now when you talk about trying to get fresh arms, man, how does Tony Vitello manage Hoover coming up in a couple of weeks? Because no offense to Hoover, the big prize is further beyond Hoover, and everybody knows that with this baseball team. That's probably a conversation for another day, but it will be an interesting topic coming up as Tennessee gets through these last two regular seasons. Tennessee a winner tonight on the Thursday night opener against Georgia. They win 5-2. Back at an early start time tomorrow for the Volunteers, and we'll see how Tennessee handles it. Georgia's bringing the heat tomorrow, right? Their ace is throwing tomorrow. Pretty good pitcher.
Yes, very good. Jonathan Cannon. And real quick before we get out of here, I do want to mention Trey Lipscomb and Blake Burke. Real quick, Trey Lipscomb, 20th home run on the season. I thought he'd have a good year. Not that good, just the sixth ball ever to have 20 home runs. And he's 4 shy of tying the program record, which is mind-blowing. And then Blake Burke, I mean, you see the talent, and it's just ridiculous. I believe it's 9 home runs and 54 at-bats this season, 4 home runs and 15 SEC at-bats. Which is just absolutely incredible. Big pop from them tonight. But like you said, Jonathan Cannon going tomorrow night from Georgia, potential first-round pick. He is their guy. You look at their team ERA, and it's pitiful in conference play, second to worst in the SEC, +7. But not because of this guy. This guy's a stud. He's gonna try to shove it down Tennessee's throat. And Tennessee was well aware post-game, knowing that they're going to have to be ready for what he's going to bring tomorrow night as they try to even up the series.
Yeah, I'm not good at math, but I would think that that's a pretty good slugging percentage when
Yes.
you have that many home runs and that few at bats.
Yes.
Is that how that works?
I think I saw somebody tweet at me, and I need to respond to this person. They sent me a DM. They were asking why Blake Burke hasn't played as much lately.
Yeah, pretty good question, right?
Yeah, and how convenient they timed that question perfectly. I think the person said second highest OBP on the team and second highest slugging, something around there. But the thing with Blake Burke is he's gotten opportunities, and really tonight was the first time he really took advantage of that opportunity against an SEC opponent. There's been some home runs at Ole Miss, but it was late in the game, blowout. Alabama A&M. I mean, it's Alabama A&M. You know, it's kind of home runs like that. He hit one, was it Auburn, when the game was kind of out of touch for Auburn. So this was kind of his first high leverage situation, if you want to call it that, where he's really come in and produced. So I think he certainly earned some more playing time tonight.
Certainly did, and Tennessee earns another conference win as they get the home slate against Georgia off on a winning note, 5-2 over the Dogs. We'll have full coverage coming up throughout the night. Tomorrow, get you ready for Game 2 tomorrow evening. He's Ben McKee. I'm Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com.